Alright, today's topic is 3-5, sums of infinite series. Today's date is today. Our objective is to find the sum of an infinite geometric series. Well, I'm sure you're asking yourself, what does an infinite geometric series look like? Well, here we have an example. Looks like my r is 1/2, because I'm multiplying by 1/2 each time. And that ... at the end just means that it's going on and on forever and ever. The numbers keep on getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And what happens is that they approach what we call a limit. It's kind of like almost like an asymptote if you were graphing it. It gets really so close to it, it might as well be that number. And for an infinite series, we have a formula that will find the sum of them. However, it only works if your r is less than 1. I'm going to circle that because that is an important piece of information. This is also referred to as it converges. If something converges, it goes towards a certain number. If your r is greater than 1, then the series diverges. What that means, if it diverges, is it keeps on getting bigger. What it is really doing is going towards infinity. It's not going toward a specific number. It's going towards infinity. And you won't get an answer. So, make a note, r has to be less than 1. I would not be surprised if you see a question on your lesson quiz. What is the difference between converge and diverge? So let's go ahead and do our first problem. We've got 1 plus 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8, and it keeps on going. If we wanted to, we probably could figure out our next number would be 1/16, 1/32, 1/64, so on. But what we are doing there is you are multiplying by 1/2. So our r is 1/2. Then it just becomes a matter of plugging it into the formula. S is going to be your first term, 1 minus your common ratio, which in this case is 1/2. So you get 1 over 1/2, which if you need a little bit of refresher on fractions, that would be the same as 1 divided by 1/2, which when we divide by fractions, we're really multiplying by the reciprocal. So if we took that series out for a long time, that number is going to get really close to 2, and if we were able to take that out to infinity, it would be 2. Now let's do another one. On this one, 24 minus 12 plus 6 minus 3. The first thing I notice here is I have positive and negatives as every other one, so I'm automatically thinking r is probably going to be negative. Well, you're dividing by -2, it looks like each time, and remember, dividing by -2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. So our r this time is -1/2. So let's plug it into our formula. Our first term, 1 minus -1/2, so that's the same as adding. It'd give me 24 over 3/2, which is the same as 24 divided by 3/2, which is the same as 24 times 2 over 3. And then I would just cross cancel. Looks like it will converge at 16. Alright, well, this one looks like it's going to be a fun one. It's going from 5 to plus 5 to the -1/2 plus 5 to the -3 and so forth. Now let's figure out what our r is going to be. If you're having a hard time with it, take one of your terms, divide it by the previous one. So I took that 5 to the negative 1, divided it by the previous one. And that would give me 5 to the negative 2, or 1 over 25. If I wanted to, for the r, I also could have taken 5 to the negative 3 over the previous one, and that would have given me the same thing. So now we know r, we know our first term. We can go ahead and plug everything in. S is going to equal our first term, 1 minus, oops, that's 1/25. That's going to give me 5, and when I subtract that, I end up with 24 over 25, which would be 5 times that reciprocal. Which would be 125 over 24. Let's throw a word problem in here. A ball is dropped from a... Sorry about that. Let's try that problem again. A ball is dropped from a height of 8 meters. Each time it hits the ground, it rebounds 3/4 of the distance. In theory, how far will the ball travel before coming to a rest? Okay, let's visually picture what's going on. It starts here, it's being dropped down, bounces back, and it keeps on bouncing. And each time, it's 3/4. It's not a perfect drawing, but you get an idea. So it starts at 8. 3/4 of 8 is going to give me 6. So right there, that's going to be 6. 3/4 of 6 is going to give me 9/2, or 4.5. So that would be there. And we could keep on figuring that out over and over again, but I'm not going to. So what I noticed right away, though, is that that highest point is 6. That does not mean that it travels 6, because it is traveling 6 meters up and 6 meters back down. So right there, total distance is 12 meters. 6 up, 6 down. I'm going to kind of ignore that 8 meters that it was dropped right now and think of that 6 as my first entire drop, because that's the first one that's up and down. At the end, I'll add that 8 meters back onto my problem. So I now know my first number is 6, and I know r is 3/4. So let's go ahead and plug that in. Oops, it should not be 6, that should be 12. Just went through the whole spiel about that. So it looks like that's 48. But remember, we also started at 8, and it just got really like half a cycle, because there's no up here, it's just down. Down 8. So let's add 8 onto that. It looks like that ball is going to be traveling about 56 meters. Alright, let's try this one. What is the value of x of the series 1 plus 2x plus 4x, and that should be 4x squared. So let's go ahead and see if we can make that a small little exponent right now. oops, it turned blue on me. We'll leave it like that. That converges to 3/5. Well, let's go ahead and figure out what our r is. Going from 1 to 2x, that's easy. It's being multiplied by 2x. So r is 2x. And we know what our first term is, and we know it converges to 3/5. So instead of s, I'm going to write down 3/5. Our first term is 1, and that would be 1 minus r, which in this case is going to be 1 minus 2x. What I notice about this is it's a proportion, so I'm just going to solve by cross multiplying. 5 times 1 is 5. And I'm going to have 3 times 1 minus 2x. Now it just becomes an algebra problem. 5 equals 3 minus 6x, or 2 equals negative 6x. Looks like x is going to equal negative 1/3. All right, I hope you enjoyed.